Hello everyone, and welcome to my YNR Official 24 channel. Victoria Newman, poised and commanding even in her most vulnerable moments, had summoned every ounce of courage to confront the volatile situation that had been simmering beneath the surface for weeks, a situation that now exploded into a crisis no one could ignore, because Victoria, whose intuition and relentless sense of justice had rarely failed her, had obtained incontrovertible evidence of Holden's infidelity. Evidence so damning, so layered in deceit and betrayal, that it threatened not just her personal peace, but the very fabric of her family's legacy and the fragile alliances that held together the Newman empire, and she would not, remain silent, knowing that if she did, she would be complicit in allowing the betrayal to fester, to poison relationships and friendships, and to devastate those who, like her own sister, Claire, had unsuspectingly become entwined in the complicated, sticky web Holden had spun with his characteristic charm, manipulation, and reckless disregard for the consequences of his actions, because Claire, whose trust and loyalty had always been her guiding principles, was blissfully unaware of the storm barreling toward her, and Victoria, though torn between her protective instincts and the natural tension that existed between the two sisters, understood with brutal clarity that she had no choice but to step in, to deliver the warning with every ounce of firmness, sincerity, and urgency that she could muster, because withholding the truth, sugarcoating it, or dancing around it would only amplify the damage, and so Victoria's voice, steady yet tinged with a barely restrained fury, cut through the air of the room, filled with the lingering scent of expensive perfume and the faint, nervous tension of household staff who sensed the impending confrontation, as she explained in painstaking detail what she had discovered, meticulously recounting the series of secret meetings, the late-night rendezvous, the series of texts and emails Holden had thought hidden, and the subtle but unmistakable signs of his duplicity that Victoria, with her razor-sharp mind and years of experience navigating the treacherous waters of Newman family politics, had pieced together like a detective unraveling a mystery, and as she spoke, the gravity of the situation settled over Claire like a thick, suffocating fog, leaving her stunned, unable to respond, her mind racing to reconcile the image of the man she trusted and perhaps even loved, with the unambiguous evidence Victoria laid bare before her, and the room, usually a haven of sophistication and control, seemed to shrink under the weight of unspoken questions, doubts, and fears, because the betrayal was not just personal, it was emblematic of the complicated, morally ambiguous world they all inhabited, where love, loyalty, ambition, and greed collided in unpredictable, often devastating ways, and Claire, whose heart now thudded in her chest like a warning drumbeat, felt a mixture of anger, heartbreak, disbelief, and confusion, emotions that Victoria anticipated and respected but could not allow to prevent the delivery of her ultimatum, which was unequivocal and crystal clear. Stay away from Holden, avoid any further entanglement with him, protect yourself emotionally and socially from the consequences of his selfishness and disregard, because the evidence Victoria had gathered painted a portrait of a man whose charm masked a pattern of betrayal, manipulation, and irresponsibility, and who, if unchecked, would continue to inflict harm on those who trusted him, and Victoria, whose maternal instincts, strategic mind, and fierce sense of justice combined to form an unstoppable force, knew that this warning was not simply advice, it was a lifeline, a shield against the inevitable fallout that would otherwise catch Claire unaware, because Holden's actions, once exposed fully to the public eye of Genoa city gossip, social circles, and corporate power plays, would ripple outward like a shockwave, affecting careers, relationships, and the fragile reputations that each of them had painstakingly built over years of navigating the perilous landscape of high-stakes family drama, and Victoria, aware of the stakes, did not soften her words or dilute her message, recognizing that clarity and forcefulness were essential to ensure that Claire grasped the severity of the situation, while simultaneously maintaining an unwavering calm and dignity that belied the storm raging within her own heart, because despite her anger, disappointment, and the sense of betrayal she felt toward Holden as a former ally, friend, or confidant, Victoria's priority remained protecting those she cared about, preserving the integrity of her family, and preventing further emotional carnage. And as Claire absorbed every word, the subtle dynamics of their relationship shifted in real time, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them that this confrontation, while painful, was a turning point, a moment of reckoning that would redefine boundaries, allegiances, and trust, because the world they inhabited rewarded cunning and punished naivety, and any lapse in judgment could result in catastrophic consequences. And so Victoria, standing tall, unwavering, and resolute, continued, elaborating on the patterns she had detected, the inconsistencies Holden had displayed, the previous warnings she had ignored in hopes that things would correct themselves, and the undeniable trajectory that suggested even greater deception lay ahead. And as she spoke, the tension in the room thickened, a palpable energy that seemed to vibrate through the polished floors and high ceilings, reflecting the internal chaos each sister felt. And Claire, her eyes wide with realization and a dawning understanding of the peril she faced, finally found her voice, a whisper of disbelief, of fear, and of reluctant gratitude, because though the truth was painful, the warning offered her a rare opportunity to regain agency, to make informed decisions, and to protect herself in a world where appearances were deceptive, motives were hidden, and betrayal could come from the most unexpected quarters. And as Victoria concluded, the room fell into a heavy silence, each word reverberating in the charged air, leaving Claire to grapple with the consequences, to process the emotions that surged like a tidal wave, and to recognize that the choice now rested entirely with her, that she could heed Victoria's warning and shield herself from further harm, or ignore it at her peril, because Holden, charming and manipulative as he might be, had crossed lines that could not be uncrossed, and Victoria, with all the force of her convictions and love for her sister, had delivered the cautionary words that could, if heeded, prevent heartbreak, scandal, and irreversible damage to both their hearts and their carefully curated lives. And as the sisters locked eyes, a mutual understanding passed between them, that in the treacherous, glittering, and often merciless world of Genoa City, survival, wisdom, and trust were hard-won commodities. And Victoria had just handed Claire a vital piece of armor, forged from truth, courage, and the unbreakable bond that even betrayal could not entirely shatter, because while the aftermath of Holden's actions would inevitably ripple through every aspect of their lives, from family dinners to boardroom decisions, from whispered conversations in hallways to public perception in the social elite, the sisters had, in this moment of confrontation, reaffirmed a truth as old as time. Loyalty and vigilance were essential. Love could be complicated and fragile, and knowledge, painful though it may be, was always more powerful than ignorance. And as Claire finally nodded, a tentative, almost imperceptible movement that signaled comprehension, gratitude, and a determination to navigate the treacherous waters ahead with eyes wide open, Victoria allowed herself a small, private sigh of relief, knowing that though the battle was far from over, and though the emotional storm that Holden had created would continue to rage in various forms, for now, at least, she had done what needed to be done, speaking truth to protect, to empower, and to shield, and in doing so, had reinforced the delicate, complex, and unbreakable bonds that defined family, loyalty, and survival in the cutthroat, glamorous, and endlessly dramatic world of the young and the restless, because in Genoa City, moments like these, moments of confrontation, revelation, and tough love, were not just inevitable, they were the lifeblood of the drama, and Victoria's warning, delivered with precision, clarity, and unwavering courage, would echo through Claire's life, shaping her choices, her emotions, and her understanding of who she could trust, and the consequences of ignoring such a warning would be stark, immediate, and undeniable, leaving Holden's shadow looming large, but Victoria's courage, foresight, and steadfast devotion as a sister shining even brighter, a beacon of truth in a world where deception lurked around every corner, and where every smile, every whisper, every secret could change everything in the blink of an eye, because in Genoa City, nothing was ever simple, Nothing was ever safe, and the drama, fueled by love, betrayal, and ambition, would always find its way into the hearts of those caught in its whirlwind. But for now, Victoria had spoken, and the warning had been delivered, an unflinching, unambiguous message that reverberated with power, clarity, and undeniable truth, leaving Claire to face the consequences, protect herself, and navigate the storm with eyes wide open, forever marked by the unforgettable confrontation, the explosive revelation, and the unwavering love of a sister who refused to let deceit go unchecked. As the weight of Victoria's revelation settled like a heavy fog over Claire, the reality of Holden's betrayal began to twist and coil within her chest, each heartbeat echoing like a drum of warning, as if the universe itself was conspiring to impress upon her the magnitude of the deception she had been blind to, because Holden, with his practiced charm, beguiling smile, and whispered assurances, had woven an intricate tapestry of lies so seamless that even someone as astute and perceptive as Claire had been unable to detect the fissures until Victoria's intervention brought the full scope of the duplicity crashing into her consciousness, and the thought of every intimate moment, every trusting glance, every shared secret now felt like a knife twisting slowly, cruelly, in her gut, leaving a trail of disbelief and sorrow in its wake, while Victoria, standing firm and resolute, could only watch her sister struggle with the emotional onslaught, feeling a deep, fierce protective instinct surge through her veins, because she knew all too well the devastating consequences of love misplaced, trust betrayed, and heart shattered, having witnessed similar destruction throughout her own life and career navigating the treacherous waters of Genoa City, where ambition often overshadowed loyalty and appearances masked the harshest realities of human behavior. And even as Claire's mind raced to reconcile the evidence with her memories and perceptions, a swirl of anger, grief, and bewilderment began to coalesce, forming a storm that threatened to overwhelm her, because the realization that Holden had not only deceived her but also manipulated her emotions for his own selfish purposes ignited a fire of indignation, one that made her want to confront him immediately, to demand answers, to unravel every thread of his calculated web. And yet, Victoria's words echoed insistently in her mind, urging caution, self-preservation, and strategic restraint, reminding her that haste, emotional impulsivity, and unchecked reactions could provide Holden with yet another opportunity to twist the narrative, to deflect blame, and to escape accountability. And as Claire wrestled with this dilemma, her thoughts inevitably turned inward, questioning her judgment, her ability to read people, and the choices that had led her to this point, because in the glamorous yet perilous world of Genoa City, even the most intelligent, most cautious individuals could find themselves blindsided by charm, manipulation, and cunning, and it was this realization that made the warning Victoria delivered feel both urgent and life-saving, a lifeline thrown across the turbulent sea of emotional chaos that now threatened to engulf her entirely. And yet, even as she recognized the necessity of heeding the advice, a pang of sorrow for what could have been lingered, a bittersweet ache for the future she had imagined, the connection she had hoped to cultivate, and the trust she had freely given, now fractured irreparably by the stark truths Victoria had unearthed, and the complexity of these emotions only deepened as Claire considered Holden's motives, his patterns, and the subtle ways he had engineered situations to conceal his infidelity, manipulations that, in hindsight, seemed almost theatrical in their execution. And the realization that she had been an unwitting participant in his schemes added a layer of humiliation and vulnerability, a sense of exposure that made the betrayal feel even more insidious, because in a city like Genoa City, reputation was currency, and emotional entanglements could easily spill into public spectacle, affecting not just personal relationships but business alliances, social standing, and the delicate balance of power among the city's elite families. And as Claire's internal storm raged, Victoria, ever the vigilant and protective sister, began to outline a course of action, meticulously detailing the steps Claire could take to shield herself from further harm, both emotionally and socially, emphasizing the importance of maintaining composure, documenting interactions, and strategically limiting contact with Holden until the full scope of his duplicity could be assessed and neutralized, because in the world they inhabited, knowledge, without strategy, was insufficient, and timing, discretion, and calculated responses were essential weapons in navigating the treacherous landscape. And yet, even as Victoria offered guidance, her own emotions were a tempest of conflicting loyalties. Because while her instinct was to protect Claire, she also grappled with lingering anger at Holden, frustration over the circumstances that allowed such deception to flourish, and the constant, gnawing pressure of balancing familial duty with the practical demands of running and protecting the Newman Empire. And as the sisters faced each other, their bond was tested in ways words could scarcely capture. A dynamic interplay of love, trust, fear, and defiance, because this was not merely a confrontation about infidelity. It was a reckoning that would ripple through every facet of their lives, reshaping their relationships, alliances, and perceptions of morality, loyalty, and justice. And as Claire slowly began to absorb the enormity of the situation, her mind raced to consider potential consequences, from the immediate emotional fallout to the long-term impact on her career, social relationships, and even the delicate fabric of trust between family members, because betrayal, once uncovered, did not remain contained, and every secret Holden had buried threatened to surface, like a tide of chaos and regret, leaving devastation in its wake. And the more she pondered, the clearer it became that decisive, deliberate action was necessary, lest she find herself ensnared once more in a web of lies and manipulation. And as Victoria continued to speak, outlining specific strategies, legal considerations, and social maneuvers designed to protect Claire from further entanglement, the sisters' conversation shifted seamlessly from raw emotion to tactical planning, a transition that highlighted Victoria's dual mastery of both emotional intelligence and strategic acumen, because surviving in Genoa City required the ability to balance heart and mind, passion and pragmatism, and every choice had consequences that could echo far beyond the immediate moment, rippling across boardrooms, social events, and intimate gatherings alike. And as Claire listened, absorbing the gravity of the situation, she felt a mixture of gratitude, determination, and lingering trepidation, because while the path forward was clearer thanks to Victoria's guidance, it was also fraught with potential pitfalls, each decision carrying the weight of both personal and professional stakes. And as the discussion continued, the sisters began to map out a plan for confronting Holden, documenting his deceit, and safeguarding themselves from further emotional harm, all while navigating the social currents of Genoa City, where gossip could travel faster than truth, and perception often outweighed reality. And as they plotted, their dynamic shifted subtly, the initial shock and emotional turbulence giving way to a quiet, resolute determination, because in the crucible of betrayal and revelation, they had found a shared purpose, a sense of empowerment born from clarity, courage, and sisterly loyalty. And yet, even as they formulated strategies, the emotional undercurrent remained potent, a reminder that while plans could be made, feelings could not be controlled, and the lingering impact of Holden's actions would continue to challenge, provoke, and test them in ways both predictable and unforeseen. And as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished floors of the mansion, a symbolic reflection of the hidden truths now illuminated, Claire realized that this confrontation, though painful, represented a pivotal moment, a chance to reclaim agency, assert boundaries, and redefine her relationship not only with Holden but also with herself, because recognizing betrayal, acknowledging its consequences, and responding with thoughtful, deliberate action was the first step toward healing, empowerment, and resilience. And as she met Victoria's steady gaze, a silent acknowledgement passed between them, an understanding that the bonds of family, trust, and love, though tested by deceit, could endure, provided they were nurtured with honesty, vigilance, and courage. And as the conversation drew to a close, both sisters felt the weight of responsibility and the relief of clarity, knowing that while the road ahead would be challenging, fraught with emotional and social landmines, and demanding of both strategic acumen and emotional fortitude, They were no longer navigating it blindly, armed instead with truth, guidance, and the unbreakable connection that only sisterhood could provide. And as the mansion's grand doors closed behind them, sealing the echoes of their conversation into the walls of history, the sisters stepped forward into a future defined not solely by betrayal, but by resilience, wisdom, and the unwavering commitment to protect, empower, and defend each other in the endlessly dramatic, unpredictable, and intoxicating world of the young and the restless, where every secret, every revelation, and every choice carried the power to alter destinies, challenge loyalties, and reshape lives forever.